Well, an Army Staff Ride basically is a training venue. It's a professional development venue for military and civilian personnel within the Army to be able to go out to a particular battlefield or a battlefield site and be able to see the site for themselves directly, essentially face to face.
Almost all the people in our group here, colonels, general officers, senior non-commissioned officers, are Cold War veterans. And we lived with the outcome of World War II, a divided Europe. And in fact, what we're seeing happening today is a continuation or a ripple of the end of World War II. So I thought it was important to understand the effects of strategic decisions.
As a child, I grew up, I was born in West Berlin, in the American sector of West Berlin. So I grew up here, so obviously the US and the Americans and the whole history were always a crucial part in me growing up and my whole childhood. And now what really gets me is the fact that we did have the communists in our front yard, the Russians, and that it wasn't a given that everything went on so peacefully. And to be able to talk to a group of Americans in this environment, in this Allied museum, and to exchange thoughts and to see their reaction when, people explain the history and explain the tremendous effort, the outstanding effort of the airlift. I think that's something very special.
It must have been pretty rude for the time for a little low-ranking soldier who had the official order not to do that to write to the president.
It's still rude.
It's still rude.
I don't think we could have a better partner, a better host nation than Germany in terms of all the resources and the partnership that has been provided to us and continues to be provided to us over the years. So,
Ambassador Emerson, what an incredible public servant. Really great session with him, understanding how America, our nation, looks at this very, very important ally, Germany. And so to see Berlin, to see where the only part of the Berlin Wall that remains is a museum, to see an incredible city.
Well, the interesting thing about Berlin is that you get a chance to see it today, but you really have to look at imagery from Berlin past. And it's so difficult today in walking through the Brandenburg Tor, the Brandenburg Gate, to look at it and realize that only 35 years ago, or 30 years ago, you couldn't walk through that gate.
To see an incredible city. Yesterday we were able to visit the Reichstag, which still has Russian graffiti on it from 1945. We were able to meet with the senior member of the Bundestag from their defense committee. So a chance to really appreciate the German resilience. Also, and again, the United States had a big hand in this. The Marshall Plan and people like General Eisenhower that had the wisdom to kind of think through helping Germany get back on its feet.
The second day is to learn about the battle in the East, which is new for Americans, so they never came here. And this is the way of Russian Wehrmacht warfighting, and it's worth to study. There are some good examples which are still valid, so rules and guidelines which are still valid as of today. It's warfighting.
And Sale of Heights would happen, really, it starts 16th of April, so only 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, and Germany surrenders. And 2 weeks later, Hitler would be dead. So it gives you an idea of the magnitude of this last battle and this last major action of the war. And that's one of the significance about it.
And the Germans had to reorganize out of a sudden another front fighting the Russians between Berlin and the Oder. This was not intended to do, this was not expected, but it was given by the Russian advance.
Objective, it's the village of Gorga.
This battlefield is one that not many Americans would ever know about because it's in the former East Germany, so no American concerns. And it was German Wehrmacht versus Soviet, so it's a chance to expose our officers to a very important battle that most of us wouldn't know anything about.
River, there's about 8 of those between Baumholder and the Suwalki Gap. That's the big ones. And then there's hundreds of smaller ones that would require some sort of gap crossing capability.
Fighting as a coalition, there were some additional options, and the commander, and I forget his name, help me out, the pole that was to the north. Yeah, David made that point on how did that factor in. There was an option to reinforce in the north.
They made a conscious decision because of the depth to Berlin that they didn't have to worry logistically as much because they weren't going as deep because they could only go so far.
I like this staff ride better than any other staff ride that I've had, and the reason is because I think it was a little bit more detailed.
It's the camaraderie that happens amongst all of us that are on the staff ride. So getting to hear other people think and talk and work through issues, and then to think back how other people had to solve some really hard problems and then try to apply that to ourselves today.
Although it was a total different war and a total different political environment, I think there are some rules and guidelines and principles which are still valid and which we can learn from.
But I think the last couple of days has either reminded me or opened my eyes even more to the resiliency of German people, both during wartime and in the aftermath.
We kind of came together, and that was great, and I think that's what staff rides are about.